the phenomenon we now term UFOs signal back. Throughout the documented history of those early pioneering manned missions into space, one can find numerous references, made by both astronauts and cosmonauts, to witnessing, and sometimes describing, curious anomalous objects seen while in orbit around the Earth. John Glenn likened these to fireflies, and for a time, NASA actually believed they had stumbled across living critters, according to one of its retired astronauts, Scott Carpenter. The years went by, and with each passing decade, there appeared no let-up in reports of UFO activity. But in the late 1980s, those reports took on far greater significance with the arrival of the camcorder. In the space of a few short years, what was once regarded as an extremely rare event, to capture a UFO on film, has now become commonplace. And while a sizable proportion of that video footage leaves most unimpressed, like the phenomena itself, a small residue of what remains can be termed impressive. In July 1991, millions of people throughout Mexico stared skywards to observe a solar eclipse. That day, several UFOs appeared in those same skies. Skeptics would later conclude that these were nothing more than planets or stars, but the video evidence, recorded independently at several different locations, suggested otherwise. Much has been said, written and claimed as to why more UFOs have emerged from Mexico than any other nation on the planet during the 1990s. Indeed, there are those who would argue that most, if not all, of the 5,000 plus hours of amateur camcorder footage taken of UFOs in the skies above Mexico this past decade alone is nothing to write home about. That the bulk of the footage can easily be explained. That some has been deliberately manufactured, while the rest has captured nothing more than passing aircraft, balloons, meteors, or falling space debris. Dependent on your point of view, the objects depicted in these sequences are either balloons or UFOs. Interestingly, during filming, the camera operators and those closest by never refer to these objects as balloons. Others liken them to spheres, a term first used alongside Foo Fighters when describing anomalous objects seen by Allied pilots operating in the Pacific theatre of World War II. Outside of Mexico, there have been other recorded instances where spheres have been seen and captured on film. Here are two recent examples. These spheres appeared over Stirling, Scotland during the summer of 1998. Local resident Brian McPhee borrowed a camcorder from his cousin after being puzzled by the repeated appearances of these objects high overhead. Some were seen to hover close to and then descend into or through the clouds. Elsewhere, some were seen to emerge from the clouds before darting away at incredible speeds. And take this as another example. Filmed in broad daylight over central London in July 1999, Christopher Martin was on hand to record the moment when this sphere appeared amidst one of the world's busiest air corridors. Was this a balloon? Or something else? But the term sphere is not just used to describe anomalous objects seen from the ground. Curiously enough, just 2 months after the Mexico eclipse, similar sphere-like objects were recorded by the crew of the Discovery space shuttle. Anomalous objects seen on the STS-48 mission footage, taken on the 15th of September 1991, have been explained away by NASA as nothing more than ice crystals, whose sudden movement was caused by the release of directional jet nozzles from the shuttle itself. What, though, the mysterious meteor-like streaks seen in the same sequence? And what of this counter-explanation to NASA's ice crystal theory by Dr. Jack Kasher of Nebraska State University?
At least 5 proofs that the objects were not ice particles, therefore spacecraft, and they were either extraterrestrial or terrestrial. Obviously, that's the dichotomy that
While many still remain unconvinced that the STS-48 footage captured intelligently controlled spacecraft in mid-flight, it was the catalyst that would persuade both UFO researchers and amateur astronomers alike to pay much closer attention to space shuttle missions in the future. And, as you will learn later, what showed up on the STS-48 footage would prove to have a profound effect on this individual, one that would eventually lead him to an extraordinary discovery. During 1996, there were two notable events. In August of that year, NASA announced that it had unearthed fossilized evidence contained in a Martian meteorite and discovered 12 years earlier in the frozen wastes of Antarctica, which would appear to suggest that life, albeit billions of years old, once existed on the red planet. The declaration, which has yet to be embraced by the scientific community at large, created headlines around the world, and more or less ensured that NASA would have no difficulty in